The world expected a lamb, gentle, obedient, easy to overlook. But you wore the disguise like a crown. Soft steps, quiet strength, a presence so unassuming they never noticed the fire in your gaze. Because while they were busy underestimating you, you were learning, adapting, mastering the game. Every interaction was data. Every time you chose to listen instead of speak, to observe instead of perform, they took it as proof that you were easy to manipulate. They thought silence meant you lacked opinion, that kindness meant you lacked discernment. You gave people space to be themselves, to show you who they really were, and they mistook that gift for ignorance. They talked over you, laughed at you, took without offering, confident that you didn't notice. But you did. You noticed everything. They assumed your heart was theirs to drain. You gave, they took. You forgave, they pushed further. You supported. They leaned until you carried the entire weight of the relationship, the friendship, the family dynamic. You were the one who made the calls, fixed the mess, remembered the birthdays, held space, and still they questioned your worth. They called you emotional, dramatic, too much. They couldn't see that your capacity to care was a power, not a flaw. You were observing patterns. You were spiritually calculating while they plotted behind smiles and compliments. You were decoding every contradiction. You noticed the tone shifts, the backhanded praise, the shifts in energy, and you took notes, not to retaliate, but to understand, because that's what made you dangerous. Not your volume, but your vision. Not your rage, but your restraint. You knew that time would reveal the truth. You trusted that divine timing always exposes what needs to be seen. So you let them believe you were soft. You let them think they were winning. Because while they were busy underestimating you, you were transforming into the very force they never wanted to meet. You were sent into their life as a blessing, not as someone to control, not as someone to drain, but as a divine mirror reflecting back everything they needed to confront in themselves. You were a healing force cloaked in human form. Your presence alone shifted rooms, calmed chaos, opened hearts. But instead of honoring that light, they reached for ways to dim it. They mistook your compassion for weakness, your humility for inferiority. They didn't understand that crossing you meant crossing a divine line. They underestimated what it meant to be chosen, to be protected, to be sacred. They thought they were playing games with someone ordinary, but you were never ordinary. You were covered, spiritually insulated, divinely shielded. What they saw as vulnerability was divine design. You were placed in their path as a test to see if they could recognize holiness in a human form. And they failed miserably. They thought they were taking advantage of a sheep. But what they were really doing was testing the patience of God. You weren't sent to be used. You were sent to guide, to teach, to awaken. And instead of humbling themselves in the presence of that sacred energy, they fed their egos. They chose manipulation over honesty, exploitation over appreciation. They thought they were the puppeteers. They didn't realize they were being watched by forces far beyond what their eyes could comprehend. You were their opportunity to grow. You showed them grace when they deserved distance. You gave them love when they offered you nothing but confusion and cruelty. You held them down when all they did was doubt you. They couldn't recognize your soul's royalty because they were too busy being obsessed with power they didn't earn. And now they sit in the wreckage of their own creation. They're sitting in the aftermath, replaying every moment they overlooked, every word they twisted, every silent prayer you whispered while they mocked your pain. And it's only now, in your absence, that they begin to understand who you were. The divine test they failed, the favor they fumbled, the blessing they thought they could break. The sheep's clothing wasn't a lie, it was calculated wisdom. You weren't pretending to be weak. You were choosing peace. You weren't hiding your power. You were preserving it. You understood early on that storms don't always announce themselves. They gather in silence, in stillness, in calm. That's what you were, calm. But underneath that quiet demeanor was a force trained in discernment, tempered by pain, and protected by a sacred fire that couldn't be seen, only felt. You chose stillness over chaos because chaos is predictable, and you are anything but. While others argued, you observed. While they tried to provoke you, you mastered restraint. They thought your silence meant they were winning. But in reality, you were giving them rope, just enough for them to reveal who they truly were. You didn't need to expose anyone, they did it themselves. You let them dig their own graves. You watched as they chose ego over empathy, clout over character, betrayal over loyalty. You weren't fooled by the performances. You saw beyond the smiles, beyond the gestures. You read energy, not intentions. You weren't naive, you were disciplined. You weren't oblivious, you were 10 steps ahead. Wolves don't need to growl when they know their bite is deadly. You knew your power didn't need to be broadcast. It needed to be protected. Your patience wasn't passivity. It was preparation. And when it was time to move, you didn't announce it. You simply changed the atmosphere. You never needed to fake anything. You just needed to survive the storm long enough for your clarity to become your crown. That mask you wore, it wasn't weakness. It was armor. And the fact that they couldn't see through it says more about them than it ever did about you. Look, you already know the game is rigged. And if you're paying attention, you know the walls are closing in. So let's talk about what we're doing about it. When you live by the day at the market's command, where profit and property rule the land, to be heard, to be held, to be dealt a fair hand, these are the things that a people demand. And we hear you. The obsidian inner order has paywalls. Yes, those who stand with us, who fuel this mission, they give us ammunition to fight the archons, to push back against the machine, to go deeper, to uncover more. And as our thank you, paid members get access to a 1-hour live, personalized weekly group tarot reading, guidance, insight, and clarity for the road ahead. But kicking a man for being down on the floor, that's something we cannot ignore. That's why, starting today, you can steal the Astral Atom exclusive daily newsletter for free. No paywall, no catch. Just join the Patreon free tier, link in the description. This is the start of our conversation with you, and it's bi-directional. You can reply to any email we send you. We'll read it, we'll hear you, and we'll do our best to get an answer to you from the universe itself. If you can support, we need you. If you can't, take what's free. The obsidian inner order is open. Now let's get back to work. One moment changed everything. They saw the wolf, and for the first time they realized they were never in control. You weren't reacting, you were revealing. Every boundary they crossed had a consequence. Every silent tear had an echo, and now the echo was loud. They couldn't laugh anymore. They couldn't deny what stood in front of them because now you weren't asking to be seen. You were commanding it. You weren't trying to harm them. You weren't seeking revenge. But they felt punished anyway because truth carries a sting when it's been ignored for too long. You were defending your territory, your spirit, your peace. The moment you chose yourself, the energy shifted. What was once open access became locked gates. What was once unconditional love now had requirements, and they couldn't handle the new terms. They realized too late they messed with the wrong one. They were never battling someone weak. They were sparring with someone who chose not to use their full strength until now. You didn't need an audience. You didn't need validation. You just needed the clarity to stop playing small. That one shift undid everything they thought they knew. And suddenly, the quiet one wasn't so quiet anymore. You never had to yell. All you had to do was show up in your truth. And when you did, everything they built on lies began to crumble. What's chasing them now isn't just regret. It's divine justice. They didn't just cross you. They activated something ancient, something protected. You weren't walking alone. Every word they twisted, every game they played, every act of deception, they weren't just doing it to you. They were doing it in full view of the ancestors who walk with you, the forces that protect you, the energy that surrounds you. And now that energy has turned cold. Retribution didn't come from your hands. It came from the spirit realm. They woke up a force they couldn't control. You weren't loud, but your silence echoes in their mind. The same person they mocked is now the shadow they can't shake. Their peace is fractured. Their conscience is loud. The guilt is gnawing because they thought they were invincible. They thought they could mistreat you and walk away untouched. But your absence revealed their weakness. Your boundaries exposed their character. Now they're being haunted, not by ghosts, but by karma. The energy they threw at you is returning, but not in the way they sent it. It's multiplied. It's mirrored. It's specific. They find themselves arguing with each other, confused by the unraveling of their world. But deep down, they know. They know the exact moment their luck turned. It was when they came for someone who was never theirs to harm. You didn't have to curse them. Your growth was the curse. Your evolution, your peace, your glow, it's all too much for them to witness because now they see what they lost. Now they realize that everything they tried to tear down only built you stronger. And that strength, it's untouchable. They're running from what they triggered, but it's already written. You don't need to chase them. You don't need to correct the narrative. Let them lie. Let them spin. Let them project. None of it changes the truth. They had access to a chosen one, and they tried to destroy it. What's happening now is simply the consequence of that choice. They didn't just lose you. They lost their covering, their grace, their divine opportunity. And what's chasing them now isn't vengeance. It's justice. Pure spiritual justice. You don't need to announce your power. Your presence does it for you. You walk into rooms and the air shifts, not because you're loud, not because you demand attention, but because something within you commands it. You don't chase clout. You don't beg to be understood. You exist with the authority of someone who knows their soul has already been validated by higher forces. Your very existence unsettles the unhealed. You don't have to say a word. They feel it in their spirit. You are the threat they never accounted for, not because you're dangerous, but because you are divine. You move with protection, with guidance, with clarity. Every step you take is spiritually aligned. You're not just a survivor. You're a gatekeeper, a protector of truth, a spiritual enforcer who carries the weight of ancestral promises and divine contracts. Your silence isn't passive. It's deliberate. Because when you speak, your words carry consequences. You were never meant to blend in. The sheep disguise was temporary, a strategy, a shield. It kept you safe while you watched, while you learned, while you allowed others to expose themselves. But now the mask has dropped. And what stands in its place is a force that cannot be moved. You don't need to raise your voice. You've already raised your vibration. Your lineage doesn't play about you. You carry prayers from generations back, prayers you didn't even know were being whispered over your bloodline. You are the answer to battles fought long before you were born. That's why you don't fold under pressure. That's why you feel things deeper. Why your intuition cuts through illusions. Why your presence reveals people's true nature. You weren't just built for survival. You were built for spiritual war, and you've already won. You don't seek revenge because you know that time, energy, and alignment will handle everything. Your power is in restraint, in discipline, in knowing you could, but choosing not to. That's what makes you untouchable. That's what makes you dangerous in the eyes of those who tried to diminish you. And now they see. The silent one isn't so silent. The soft one isn't so soft. You are the storm they never prepared for. And you didn't even have to raise a hand. You didn't expose the wolf to make a scene. You did it to protect your peace. Every boundary you now uphold is rooted in sacred intention. Every no you say is backed by spiritual clarity. You're not here to prove anything to anyone. You're here to live aligned, to move wisely, and to guard the light you nearly let them dim. The old you, the one who explained, who tolerated, who justified your soul to people who were committed to misunderstanding you, that version no longer exists. Now you choose your words carefully. You speak when it matters. You engage when it's aligned. Your time isn't up for grabs. Your energy isn't a free resource. The people who once thought they could drain you without cost now face locked doors and cold silence because you learned through heartbreak, through betrayal, through exhaustion, that your spirit is holy ground. And not everyone deserves access. You're moving with intention now. Every step, every interaction, every decision is filtered through purpose. You don't let chaos in because you're protecting more than just your peace. You're protecting your assignment. You understand now that not everyone is meant to come with you. Some were lessons, some were distractions, some were tests of your discernment. And now that you've passed, you're no longer operating on survival. You're operating on purpose. Your power is precise. It's focused. It doesn't need an audience. It needs direction. You've shed the need for validation, for proving your worth to people who couldn't even see themselves clearly. And now you're surrounded by silence, not because you're alone, but because you finally cleared the noise. In that silence, you found strength. In that stillness, you found strategy. People don't get to play with your spirit and walk away untouched anymore. You've called your energy back from every place it was misused. You've rewritten the terms, you've recalibrated your space. And if anyone wants access now, they'll have to approach with reverence, or not at all. This is a new era, one where your presence demands respect before you even speak. And those who can't handle that frequency, let them fall away. Your path is too sacred to make space for those who only came to test, not honor, your light. They're scared now, not just of you, but of what they awakened within you. They got a glimpse of something they weren't prepared for. The version of you that no longer accepts crumbs, no longer bends to keep peace, no longer sacrifices your soul for belonging. The version of you that's wide awake, fully aware, and walking with conviction. That's what terrifies them, because the version they betrayed, manipulated, and mocked is gone. And the one who stands in their place doesn't look back. Even if they apologize, even if they show remorse, they know the door they once walked through without knocking is now sealed shut. You don't hate them. You're not bitter, but you're elevated. And your elevation creates a boundary they can't cross. They'll approach with caution now because they remember the moment the mask slipped. They remember the stillness that followed. They remember how it felt when your silence wasn't passive anymore, but prophetic. Some will keep their distance out of guilt, others out of fear, not fear of revenge, but fear of exposure. Because being around you forces truth to rise to the surface. You've become a mirror they can't lie to. And for people who are still hiding from themselves, your presence is too heavy, too sharp, too pure. So they stay away, telling themselves stories to make peace with what they lost. They can't talk about you the same. They won't say your name casually. You're not just nice anymore. You're not easygoing, harmless, naive. That illusion has been shattered. Now your name carries weight. Your story is whispered. Your growth is studied from afar. You've become the example they use when explaining why you don't mess with people who move in silence. And it's not about ego, it's about energy. You've reached a level where your vibration repels what once clung to you, where your peace speaks louder than any argument, where your distance delivers more power than your presence ever did. You've become untouchable, not because you're closed, but because you're clear. Clarity created a space that can't be faked, forced, or manipulated. They can never approach you the same again, not because you've changed, but because now they've seen what you were holding back. And that memory alone will keep them exactly where they belong, on the outside, looking in. Let them talk. Let them rewrite the story, paint themselves as the victim, twist the past to make their conscience easier to carry. None of it matters. You know the truth. You lived it. You bled through it. And now you've risen above it. You never needed to bark, never needed to perform vengeance. All you had to do was stand firm in your truth and let the silence tell the rest. You were the wolf in sheep's clothing all along, the soft voice, the steady hands, the calm eyes holding storms. They thought they had you figured out, thought they knew your limits. But they never knew the depth of your restraint, the power behind your patience. Now they do. Now they see what happens when the wolf stops hiding. And they're scrambling, not just because you're gone, but because they know they'll never experience your presence again in the same way. That door is closed. That chapter is sealed. You've stepped into a version of yourself that no longer just survives. You reign. The one who once played small to keep the peace now demands it. The one who once begged to be seen now vanishes without explanation. The one who once gave endlessly now gives selectively, intentionally, with reverence. You didn't become this overnight. It was forged in disappointment, betrayal, silence, and sacred healing. You clawed your way out of the illusion. And now that you're awake, there is no going back. Your softness still exists, but it is protected. Now your love still flows, but only to those who can receive it with clean hands and clear hearts. You are no longer for the careless, the reckless, or the spiritually blind. You are for those who recognize the sacred and treat it accordingly. Stay grounded, stay silent, stay powerful. Let the world guess your next move. Let them wonder if the calm is safety or warning. Let your presence remind them. Some wolves don't howl, they wait. And when they move, they end cycles. You are not to be played with. You never were. And now there's no room left for misinterpretation. The wolf is awake.